Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a big update coming out of the state of Tasmania. The designs for the new Macquarie Point Stadium have been released. And in this video, we are going to be looking at the renderings and discussing the stadium. Now, what we know about the stadium is it is a 23,000 seat roofed stadium. It will be the host of the Tasmania Devils, the new AFL team. It will also obviously host the Hobart Hurricanes in the cricket and at least limited overs international cricket. And it will be the first translucent roofed stadium in Australia. Now, the roof will not be retractable. We knew that. It won't open, but it is a very modern design. It does let in a lot of natural light. And it will be the world's largest timber roofed stadium, which is very interesting. Obviously, we know with Tasmania, the forestry and logging industries are very big down there. And they have really incorporated the timber design into both the exterior and the roof of the stadium. So the framing and structural support on the roof is actually timber. You don't have any light towers, obviously, because it is an indoor stadium, but they do have the ring lighting around the perimeter of the stadium. And you can see the timber is really prominent there, which is quite interesting. Now, the roof itself will be 51 metres tall at its apex. And there was a bit of concern coming out of Cricket Tasmania about potentially cricket balls impacting the roof on balls that are hit high into the air, but they have built it in a dome shape so that the highest point will be in the centre of the ground. So you think a top edge from a pool shot, typically it does more or less go straight up. So hopefully that mitigates any concerns there. But in terms of the actual design, it is a very nice design. I really like it. As we said, it does seat 23,000. It is basically a two-deck approach. The whole way around, you do have the media and the corporate hospitality suites on one side, and then obviously the seating around the rest of the ground. Looks like the upper deck and the lower bowl are pretty much even in size. You do also have the cricket facilities behind the goals at one end. You can see the commentary box and the media centre there for the cricket. In terms of the exterior, it does sort of remind me of Optus Stadium. They have incorporated the timber aspect of it, plenty of glass, plenty of natural light, which I really like. It's not going to have that cold warehouse feel that you do get with Marvel Stadium because you don't get any natural light inside. And it does blend in quite well with the surrounding. It doesn't look huge on the outside, which you would expect. It is only a 23,000 seat venue. And it's interesting the timber aspect of it, whether that would pose any risks from a fire perspective. Presumably they have gone through the due diligence and made sure that isn't going to be an issue, but it is very unique. I do like it. It's always nice when stadiums do incorporate some of the local aspects of the economy or the natural resources of that area into it. So it does really fit Tasmania very nicely. And there was some concerns from particularly the NIMBYs about whether it would obstruct the RSL cenotaph, which is the war memorial next to the stadium on the hill there. There was some concern that the stadium would obstruct the view of that and really take away its prominence, but there has been a lot of thought put into that. It does incorporate quite well with the city, as you can see from the wide shot. It is right in the CBD, which is really good. You don't really see any modern stadiums that are built out in the suburbs. And particularly with Hobart, you know, they don't have a rail network within the city, so it is important to get that in a central location to make it as easy as possible for people from all around the city and all around the state in this instance to get to the stadium. Now, they are still saying they are going to be able to build this within the $715 million budget that was allocated for it. I really don't see how this gets done for that price. We know typically big projects do blow out in terms of cost. In terms of recent stadiums that have been built, you do think of Optus Stadium in Perth. The stadium itself was around $1 billion when you don't include the surrounding infrastructure. Obviously, that stadium is over twice as big as this stadium, so you wouldn't expect it to cost more than Optus Stadium, but I think when you do consider the inflation and potentially the cost of construction in Tasmania, because of the remote location due to it being an island, that it will be quite a bit higher than 715 million, but we will wait and see. Obviously, once they start construction, it is going to get built regardless. It'll just be a matter of whether the state or federal government ends up funding the shortfall. Now, the plan is for construction to begin in late 2025 and be ready for the 2029 AFL season, with a provision that the stadium is 60% built by 2027. And the plan will be for the Devils to split their games between Blundstone Arena and University of Tasmania Stadium in Launceston in that first year. There was also some issues with the goods shed, which is a heritage listed shed from the railway that was present in Mac Point previously. Apparently they are going to be shifting that goods shed because the stadium would be built where it is currently located. So they will just be relocating that goods shed by a few meters to be able to get the stadium built. And apparently the circular design was inspired by the railway roundhouse, which did exist previously on the site, which was a structure that did exist when the railways were still in operation on Macquarie Point. Now, there is a question of whether Test cricket is able to be played here. I believe the ICC regulations currently mean that you can't play a Test match in an indoor venue, but there's really never been a case where a city has had an indoor venue as its primary cricket stadium. So I think they are going to be lobbying pretty hard for the ICC to tick off on this stadium to be able to host Test matches. But really, how often does Hobart host Test matches? They have only hosted one in the last 8 or 9 years, being that Ashes Test down there. That was relocated from Perth due to the government restrictions at the time because of the pandemic. And we know there is less and less Test cricket being played every year, so it is unlikely that Hobart is going to be hosting a Test match any more than once in every 5 or 10 years. And I just did want to mention the redevelopment that is happening to University of Tasmania Stadium in Launceston. That is $130 million split evenly between the state and federal government for the upgrade to that stadium, and that is due to commence late this year. They have been releasing the tenders for that. It won't be a massive renovation. They will just be replacing some of that temporary seating on the outer side of the ground. They will also be upgrading the facilities for the players and coaches. They will be filling in a bit of the seating in that two-tiered stand. You do see some of the renderings here. It does look nice. And if you don't know about University of Tasmania Stadium, a lot of the seating that you do see on the outer wing as you look at it from the broadcast perspective is actually temporary stands that have been up for 25 years at this point. So it is good to see some of them going. I believe that stadium actually will have a bigger capacity than the Macquarie Point Stadium when it is built, which is interesting. They will play a majority of their games, the Devils, in Hobart, but you got to ask the question when it comes to finals, if they're playing Collingwood, I wonder if the AFL says play it in Launceston because you can fit more people in. It'll be a very interesting discussion if it does get to that point. There was a bit of talk about the Hobart Stadium having the capacity to have its capacity expanded, but I really don't see from the renderings how you do that. There's not a lot of room to put additional seating in above the existing 2 decks without removing the roof, and obviously that's not going to happen. I think there's always talk about these stadiums being expandable, but it never really seems to happen. In case you don't know, Optus Stadium does have the capacity to be expanded to 70,000. Even Amy Park in Melbourne does have the ability for its capacity to be expandable to 50,000, but obviously you have to remove the roof in that instance. So I think that's just something that they do say to calm the nerves of people who are concerned about the capacity of the venue. Personally, I would like to see the Macquarie Point Stadium in Hobart fit another 4,000 or 5,000, so you get the capacity up to 27,000, 28,000. I think that's a good number, but they do like to keep the capacity low to keep demand high so they can charge higher prices for tickets. But either way, guys, that is a very interesting update. Big things happening in Tasmania with both of their AFL stadiums, and we will be following this project closely as construction commences in the run-up for the Devils to begin playing in the AFL. That is all we're going to have time for today, guys. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.